Explosive allegations against the biggest aid organization in Gaza, UNRWA, which led to its biggest government donors to suspend funding over what Israel says are UNRWA employees' connections and, in several cases, direct participation in the horrific October 7th terrorist attack on Israel. Director of UN Watch, Hillel Neuer, how do you pronounce your last name?
Neuer.
Neuer, okay, I got it right. Testified on Capitol Hill this afternoon, and he joins us. Now, Hillel, you've called for the complete dismantling of UNRWA, not just because of this, but because of years of such problems and connections to Hamas and other terrorist groups. And you presented even more information beyond what Israeli officials shared with CNN, including a group chat among UNRWA teachers. Tell us what your research has found.
Well, we exposed today a Telegram chat group of UNRWA teachers in Gaza, which is primarily to share information that teachers need, work schedules, salaries, memos about work stuff, interspersed with lots of messages, photos, videos celebrating the October 7th massacre while it was happening and other terrorist attacks. So 3,000 UNRWA teachers are on this chat group. We identified about 30 of the individuals with their UNRWA contract numbers, their photos, their names. These are UNRWA teachers who were celebrating the attacks.
And as I've noted, you've been looking into this for a long, long time. I want to play part of your opening statement from Congress today where you say you've given the United Nations multiple warnings about some of these problems. Let's roll that tape.
We sent them reports in 2021, 2019, 2017, 2015, numerous reports. They never contacted us for information. They refused our repeated written requests to meet to discuss the problem. They cannot say they didn't know. Mr. Guterres knew. The head of the UNRWA knew. The United Nations knew. They simply chose not to act.
Do you think that the UN Secretary General Guterres should resign?
Yes, I think he should. I mean, the October 7th massacre, he said it didn't happen in a vacuum. And then he listed Palestinian grievances. The truth is, it didn't happen in a vacuum because UNRWA is a UN agency that for more than 70 years has taught Palestinians that the war of 1948 is not over. The world is with you. The war is not over. Your homes are not here in Gaza. When you get cement from the international community to build homes, hospitals, and schools, the message they got was, of course, they're going to use that cement to build miles of terror tunnels into Israel to invade Israel. The message of UNRWA is to perpetuate them as refugees and to tell them that their home is in Israel.
So obviously there is a humanitarian crisis going on in Gaza right now. 2 million displaced Palestinians. Jordan's foreign minister says stripping UNRWA funding right now means the agency and the Palestinians who rely on them will be collectively punished. If UNRWA ends, what happens to the people who need the aid?
Well, look, the supporters of UNRWA are the people who typically care least about Palestinians. The King of Jordan said not one Palestinian will leave Gaza and go into Jordan or Egypt, not one. So the same folks who, it's interesting, the same folks who say there's a genocide happening in Gaza are the same folks who say over my dead body will I let one Palestinian leave that area and to find refuge in neighboring Egypt, for example. So I don't think the King of Jordan really cares about the Palestinians in Gaza. And there is a humanitarian need. Of course there is. It has to be addressed. The UN knows how to address humanitarian needs. They can send in trucks in Sudan, in Syria. They know how to do it. The notion that UNRWA is irreplaceable. It's the only agency. It is infiltrated by Hamas. It is dominated by Hamas. There are alternatives. We need to figure them out.
So, okay, forget the King of Jordan. Let me just say, as somebody who cares about what happens to the innocent Palestinian people, not Hamas, but the innocent Palestinian people, right now, they're in a crisis. You can't end, I mean, do you really think you could end UNRWA right now? Because, I mean, these people, like, literally, like, are dying of disease and malnutrition and hunger and...
Yeah. Well, of course it's not going to end right now, and even the countries who suspended funding, some of it is performative. The funding was sent recently in Congress today. There were some congressmen who were upset that apparently the State Department just sent a ton of money before making that announcement. So UNRWA will be fine in the near term, and of course no one's saying in the near term abandon the Palestinians. But in the slightly more than near term, UNRWA is not the solution, it's the problem. The Swiss foreign minister 5 years ago, Ignacio Cassis, said it's a perverse logic. UNRWA only perpetuates the conflict because they tell Palestinians the war is not over, keep going. The UN Refugee Agency, I work across the street from them in Geneva every single day. Their job is to resettle refugees, to make you no longer a refugee. UNRWA is the opposite. They want Palestinians to be perpetual refugees. That perverse logic has to stop. Of course, Jake, we have to be concerned about the humanitarian situation and not let that slide, but there are alternatives. Now is the time to begin finding them.
So Washington Post columnist Josh Rogan, who is a supporter of Israel, but also cares about the Palestinian people, he points out that UNRWA also supports an additional 3 million Palestinians in Jordan and Lebanon and Syria, and the suspension of UNRWA funding would means, quote, the Biden administration is placing more burden on regional partners that are already dealing with the added risk and instability caused by the growing regional violence. What do you make of just that argument, like aside from Gaza, that UNRWA
is elsewhere?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, look, let's take Jordan, for example. It's a terrific example that Josh brought. There are about 2 million so-called Palestinian refugees in Jordan. Most of them have Jordanian citizenship. Okay, my great-grandparents fled Russian persecution to Canada in 1904. I am not a Russian refugee. My family's been Canadian for over a century. If someone's been in Jordan for more than 70 years, has Jordanian citizenship, why are they refugees from Tel Aviv? They're not refugees. So let's help them. Give the money to the Jordanian government. We have an established government there. Let them run the Ministry of Education. Let the Jordanian government run the schools and clinics. Why is it a UN agency that has an agenda, and the agenda is to undo Israel? We need to not support a malign agency that has that malign agenda.
All right, Hillel Neuer from UN Watch. Thank you so much. Good to see you, sir.